Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 53, Narcissism. We are doing a series, and today's topic is insanity energy. Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I know it's been a while since I've done an episode, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about that before I get started. So, I started my next annual shamanic training group in mid October, so about a month and a half ago. And that group has turned out to be incredible in all of the best ways, but also unexpectedly a lot. It is as if we came together and sat in an ayahuasca ceremony that's never ended, only there was no ayahuasca. It is just the medicine work. So that experience has been pretty next level for all parties involved, especially me as the container holder. And yeah, it's been great to see how much transformation and ego death and upheaval and reorganization everyone's gone through in such a short period of time. So that's been amazing. In addition to that, I also met a potential partner soulmate person, and that has had its own experience attached to it that's still in process and turning my world upside down in all of the best ways. So the podcast has had to take a back seat, but today we are going to get started again talking about narcissism. So, you may or may not have noticed that I did have a couple episodes on narcissism on the podcast previously, and I did have to take them down for personal reasons that I will not be going into today, but I will at some point. So, that was not your imagination if you've been following the podcast for a while. Um, Today, we're going to talk about it actually from a bit of a different perspective, and it's coming up because I do have a course that'll be starting in early January on healing from narcissism. Um, yeah, it's going to be great. So if it's for people who have had encounters with narcissists in childhood or relationship and it still feels unresolved, or maybe you have an inner narcissist that you're still dealing with, or maybe you just want to understand the dynamic better for your own healing process or work with clients, it's going to be awesome. And then I'm having a master class on narcissism as a spiritual disease through the meetup group on December 6th. So feel free to join me there. It is free if you feel called to it. So today's topic is insanity energy as it relates to narcissism. Bear with me because this is kind of a complex topic. I am going to jump around a little bit here and hopefully, yeah, it'll track. So, my approach to narcissism is in a much deeper way than most other people's because the spiritual perspective requires you to look at more dimensions of a topic than, let's say, the psychological or therapeutic perspective. When we talk about narcissism, it's typically as it presents in a person and how it impacts us as a victim, but we don't really talk about the energetic signature of it, the vibration of it, or all of the intricate ways in which it shows up in life and in society. So, the baseline for this concept is that narcissism is anything that makes you question your own truth, power, or reality. So, we can see it clearly in people in relationship, but you can also understand how much bigger it might be based on that definition. It's definitely collective, it's definitely systemic, and it's definitely inside each of us to some extent. So, my goal with the series is to help you identify this vibration, understand it, have a different perspective on it. And then my goal for the upcoming course is to show you how to pull yourself out of it so that you stop falling into the trap of narcissism. So, we're going to think of narcissism as a disease. And I'm going to go more into the root cause of that disease during the masterclass and upcoming course, but we are going to talk about it today. From a shamanic standpoint, disease is an imbalance and it's nature trying to correct the balance. It's very simple. Earth is about polarity. It's not personal. It's about maintaining balance. So when something is out of balance, a disease pops up. Now, this might be a hard concept to grasp. It's okay. Stick with me on it. So, in my work, my job is to see the unseen side of things. So, the unseen side of a disease is the energetic, intangible side. It's the underlying reason why the disease is present. It's not the symptomology. It's not the how do I fix it? It's the why so that I know how to fix it. So it's kind of looking at it from a different perspective so that you can do the healing, but it's not a head on kind of healing. So in the podcast today, we're going to talk about symptoms and identification of this disease, we'll call it. I love it as a spiritual disease. Um, and that's insanity. So let me define insanity for you as an energy. And if you're energetically sensitive, you may know exactly what this feels like. So to me, insanity energy feels like I'm having a tornado be placed around me. It swirls, it's very windy, it's very strong. It makes it hard to stand in myself, right? It makes it hard to stand in my knowing, in my body, in my logic, because it's trying to constantly sweep me away. It's like if we don't want to look at this energetically and we want to look at this intellectually, it's circular logic. There's no way out. The logic is lose-lose because it doesn't make any sense to begin with. You can't argue it. And the only way to escape it is to step outside of it. And circular means spinning, not moving forward. Okay, so spinning energy, whether you feel that in energy or you feel that or you know that from an intellectual standpoint. Now, some more subtle examples of this would be contradiction and hypocrisy. They're both a flavor of insanity energy. So, what happens to your mind when you encounter this energy? You question your reality, your intuition, and your knowing. You may forget why you came to a place. You may forget why you entered a conversation, why a fight started. Your perspective might get turned around from one side to another, but you're not really sure how it happened. Those are all signs of insanity energy. Now, how does this show up in relationship with other people? We'll talk about that from a few different levels. First, if a person causes you to feel like you're questioning your own experience, you're questioning your own reality, they are projecting out insanity energy around you, right? Or maybe you are, because we can do that too. What it could look like in real time would be like, let's say every time you have a fight with one of your parents, they buy you cookies or cakes or sweets or things to make you feel better. But then they make comments about your weight, right? So you are stuck in a circular logic situation where love and connection is brought to you by food, but then you are guilted and shamed because that food is changing your body. That's narcissism energy. That's insanity energy. Or when someone tells you, like, oh, this thing that you do is my favorite thing about you, but then they use it against you later when you're in a state of vulnerability or maybe you're in a fight. That's insanity energy. It's circular. And it makes you feel like crazy, like you don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. That's all the same energy. How does it show up in our society? Circular logic, right? This shows up in a lot of government agencies and structures. Like, how many times have you said this to yourself or to someone else? This doesn't make any sense, but that's what we have to do in order to be part of society. So we just have to do it. We just have to override that part in us that says, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we doing this? Because that's what we're asked to do to be part of society. We just have to accept it. A lot of circular logic happening in government, in the school systems. I remember feeling it a lot during COVID. We would go to these places and there would be like repetition in words and mannerisms. And I'd look around and be like, I feel like I'm in the center of a crazy bin. A lot of insanity energy there during the pandemic. That was interesting. Think about how we set up schools and taxes and healthcare, not actually places for real healing, but they stop healing from happening and then call it healing, right? So if you are being treated for something, but they are not able to help you with the root cause, they give you something to make the symptoms go away, which doesn't alleviate the disease. It could actually make the disease worse because now you can't feel the symptoms. That's circular. That's insanity. If you think about the food or the diet industry, you're told to eat healthy, but you're not shown how. You are bombarded with foods, or maybe the ones that you can have access to or the ones you can afford have been proven to make you sick. But then medical professionals and the news and the media is all about health and wellness, and there is this circular energy to these things. So I really have to step back and kind of feel it from a bigger picture, right? We're not looking at this in a specific minutia kind of way. How does it show up in ourselves? This one's fun. Gaslighting yourself is a huge thing. It's a huge thing, and I think most people don't even know that they do it. But it's like feeling confused or swirly after you make a decision, or maybe after you don't make a decision, like to take a job, to call the girl, to give a speech. When you have so many of those mind voices that you don't know where you stop and where they begin, you are stuck in the tornado. That's the mind vortex, the inner narcissist. We do it a lot when we get close to something that we want, or something that we love, or something that will bring us joy, and we talk ourselves out of it. That's inner gaslight, right? And that kind of is it's an overarching theme in this topic, is that we do all have inner narcissists, and we work with them the same way we work with outer narcissists. So with all of these things that I'm mentioning, the theme is they don't make sense, but you can't see it until you can stand in your own power for just a moment. You have to remove yourself in order to do that. You can't build your own power while being in the middle of the insanity energy. Now, I'm going to give you some specific examples of this energy. So with a person who is literally like textbook insane, they don't use logic. They're all over the place. They don't make sense. They embody the insanity energy. They're not just playing with it, they're living it. What I'm asking you to do is look at this as an energy that's held, carried, encouraged, projected, all of those things in one person. Maybe not projected, but it's held and carried and encouraged. In these other circumstances, I'm asking you to consider it as being projected. Remember, we're talking about a vibration, right? So feel what that might look like. Feel what that might feel like. Now, what about things like always talking about saving money, but instead of like buying smart or buying in bulk, you're buying store brand. You're throwing out things due to overconsumption, overbuying. You're eating out. You're shopping for bargains, but you don't really need the thing, right? It makes no sense, which means it's all story. And story is vortex energy. That's insanity energy. So you can feel the subtle threads of contradicting, of hypocrisy in this example, where we're talking about saving money, but we're not actually doing the things that save us money, which means we're in story, which means we're not in our body, we're not following our intuition, we're allowing the insanity vortex to take us over. Now, you're probably going to be able to see these faster in other people before you are in yourself, but my goal here isn't to fix you. It is to illuminate something so you can start chewing on it, because this will take time to digest. Now, what about food and body image? It's a huge thing in our society. You can't eat so many calories, but it's okay for you to eat processed food all day. Food is very much like, this is good and this is bad. There's no education around real food or around inner strength. And a lot of these times you're going to encounter this and not be able to put your finger on why. This doesn't make sense. I've tried all the diets. I've taken all the tests. I do everything I'm supposed to do. And I still can't get to the bottom of this eating thing or this disorder or this weight thing. That's the insanity energy. You're not actually anchored in because you're swirling around with all the contradicting information. That one's really big picture because that's some collective stuff right there. What about when you're arguing with a person and you walk away leaving, you leave thinking that you are the problem? You don't know how you got there, but there you are. Now you're walking away to go work on yourself because you feel guilt and shame over the interaction. Now, I'm not talking about an isolated incident because sometimes we're all the problem and we need to go work on ourselves. I'm talking about those interactions where maybe it's every time you see the person, maybe it's every time you try to bring up something vulnerable with the person, your conversation turns into how you are the problem. And you don't really know how it got there, but you feel deeply that you are the problem and you need to go do some work on yourself, or you need to feel some shame, or maybe you need to eat some McDonald's, whatever works for you. That's an indicator of the insanity energy. You've lost your center. So, seeing the unseen part of narcissism is not just about spiritual stuff. It's about seeing what you can't easily prove. And that is what feeds narcissism because it largely lives in the unseen. And being who I am, I see the patterns and the connections that are not obvious. They are the undercurrent or the threads or the things that aren't being looked at head on. And insanity and narcissism is one of those things. I want you to know why this energy presents itself in your life, why it comes up in the collective, and how you can heal from it. So keep tuning into the podcast. We're going to keep talking about the different facets of narcissism as a spiritual disease. The first symptom being insanity energy. And we're going to keep going into it. So join me for the next podcast, the upcoming masterclass, or the full 6-week course starting in January. And we'll keep going further there. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.